The most extreme form of reinterpreting Shakespeare is to say that he was someone else, to deny that he wrote the plays at all. This is a famous topic. People who know nothing else about Shakespeare know there's been a dispute over this. If I fall into conversation with a stranger at a cocktail party and let it be known that I teach Shakespeare for a living, I'm almost certain to be asked, well, tell me, did he really write those plays? I shouldn't complain. People with any kind of job have to get used to some idiot question or other. And it's better to be a Shakespearean than a proctologist. No one doubts that there was a William Shakespeare who was born in Stratford-on-Avon and who went on to act in the London theatres and eventually died back in Stratford. What is contested is whether that man wrote the plays that have come down under his name. And the people who contest it propose various different alternatives. Francis Bacon, the Earl of Oxford, Christopher Marlowe, there's a long list. So instead of calling them Baconians or Oxfordians and blah, 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 I refer to them under the blanket title of anti-Stratfordians. The one thing they agree with was that the one thing they agree on is it wasn't the guy from Stratford. Now, anti-Stratfordianism is fascinating because it tells us a great deal about what people look for in a superlative writer. They see a wonderful poet, or a remarkable psychologist, or a great philosopher, or a man capable of expressing the views of an aristocratic class, or a man deeply concerned about the status of women and the oppressed, or any number of things for which there is some basis in the text of Shakespeare's plays. Then they note that the image they've constructed of the writer doesn't seem to cohere with a guy who was born the son of a country glover. The glover himself was probably illiterate, and the son never got beyond grammar school in Stratford. So it must have been somebody else. I must therefore assert, at the start of a course of lectures on Shakespeare, that there is no mystery here. There is no subject for debate. The facts of Shakespeare's life are as well recorded as anyone could expect, of his domestic life in Stratford, of his professional life in London. We'd like to know more, of course, but we don't know a great deal about the life of any person in his time, except for a few great figures of state and church, like the Queen and the archbishops and the lords and generals, whose activities were naturally given a great deal of attention. We know as much about Shakespeare's life as we know about any other commoner of the time. The Elizabethans did not live filling out the records, keeping the forms the way we do. We do have documents that say, or that make sense only if you assume, that the actor from Stratford and the playwright in London were the same man. If they were not, if those documents are forgeries or lies, then quite a number of people would have to have been engaged in a great conspiracy, for which there is no positive evidence and no attested reason. Anti-Stratfordianism is in fact just crazy if you know anything about how the theater works as a profession at all. Theater is a collaborative art, and people in the theater always know what other people in the theater are doing. Even now, in the much larger world of the New York theater, everybody in it knows everybody else. Everybody knows if someone is ghostwriting someone else. Everybody knows if a new director has been brought in to fix a play. Everybody knows who's understudying such and such a play. Everybody knows who's sleeping together. In the much smaller world of Shakespeare's theater, in London of 1600, when probably no more than 200 people were trying to get a living out of putting on plays at any given time, it is unimaginable that 36 successful plays could be written by someone other than the man to whom they were publicly attributed without someone leaving some statement about the hoax. Anti-Stratfordianism, it's a horrible word, stems from false expectations. People expect that a great playwright would attract curiosity, that we would inherit diaries and personal reminiscences and the like, which we don't have for Shakespeare. But we expect that because successful playwrights today are celebrities. They are interviewed. They are invited to speak on college campuses. Elizabethan playwrights did not attract that kind of attention. They merely provided stage entertainment. If they were very good, they might have aroused the interest of what Gabriel Harvey calls the wiser sort for one scribbled note in his study. But it would be the plays that would provoke interest, not the personality. We expect, or at least some people expect, plays to reflect the personal experience of the writer. Specifically, it is assumed that plays about kings and queens and lords must have been written by an aristocrat. How else would he know how they behaved at court? Hence the suggestion that it was really Bacon who grew up at court and became Chancellor of the realm, or Oxford, an aristocrat whose lineage goes back to the Norman conquest. But that is to mistake the nature of Shakespeare's art, which does not pretend to present a realistic transcription of behavior in high places. No real king or duke ever spoke in spontaneous blank verse. And to suppose that a middle-class boy could not grow up to write tragedies about princes is sheer social snobbery. Most Elizabethan plays are about princes, yet none of the anti-Stratfordians have ever suggested that the plays of Shakespeare's contemporaries, the plays of Webster or Kidd or Beaumont and Fletcher, were really written by lords. We expect, or at least some of us do, that plays rich in literary allusions and classical references and historical knowledge must have been written by a man with a university education. After all, we need a college education to understand them, or parts of them. Shakespeare did not attend a university. Christopher Marlowe did, so he must have written the plays. But education was different then. Grammar school provided a rich literary training. Grammar, composition, rhetoric, poetry, figurative language, the classics. The universities, then, were like graduate schools. They were meant for specialized training in theology or medicine or law. From a good grammar school education, and the Stratford Grammar School was good, a smart boy could have developed his verbal skills and also learned how to look things up, how to acquire specialized knowledge that he might want to need to use. Marlowe went to university, true. So did other playwrights like Robert Greene. But Ben Jonson did not. He taught himself, and he was the most learned playwright of the time. And Thomas Kidd did not go to university, and Thomas Middleton went to Oxford but dropped out. Anti-Stratfordianism is the extreme case of reconceptualizing Shakespeare to meet the interests or needs or expectations or fancies of the present. And some of it is really crazy in its methods. But however mad it may be, its fundamental impulse is one common to all readers of Shakespeare. Confronted with enormously stimulating artistic achievement that encompasses a wide variety of human experience, those of us who are stimulated are bound to find something that speaks to our needs, our preoccupations. Those who fear a breakdown of social order find in his works a celebration of hierarchy and harmony as it supposedly existed at some time in the past, because his kings do desire peace. Those who desire to shake up the current establishment enlist him as a social critic on behalf of marginalized people. He writes with equal eloquence for the rulers and the oppressed, for women and for men, for young and for old. He can speak for each character with such authenticity that when it strikes a particular chord in us, we think we hear Shakespeare himself speaking. Of course, it is all Shakespeare, and we all find in his riches something we need to stay in contact with him.